It's a real blessing to have this chance to be with you here on this Wednesday. And today I'd like to look at Acts chapter 14. Here we find an encouraging part of the life of the Apostle Paul. It was from the church at Antioch. He and Barnabas had been sent out to reach the Gentile world. And that's what they did. And they established many churches in what we now know as Turkey, that's Asia Minor. But not only did they establish the churches, but when they went back through that, what it would have been probably up to a 2-year time period, there were people in those churches, men who had so well been trained in the scriptures that they now were able to lead the churches. I mean, that's a victory. And so they come back to Antioch, and this is very similar to the missions presentations that we have. In fact, that's where we get it from. The churches need to hear what God is doing. So he comes back and doesn't have a PowerPoint. He doesn't need it. The Holy Spirit just empowers him as he speaks. And we read in verse 26, and thence sailed to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. That was back in chapter 13. And when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles. What a tremendous message. What an encouragement that would have been to these people, to think that these areas that knew nothing about God now had thriving churches, leadership. God was reaching the communities. These entire communities were being shaken by the power of the gospel. I am sure that the faith of many across the Antiochian church was greatly encouraged. But we need to remember, it wasn't an easy trip. Their first stop had a satanic man oppose them. Then you had Mark leave them, the nephew of Barnabas that was supposed to be helping in this very important time. And then you had the situation where Paul was stoned and left for dead. And there were other places in which there was opposition. And yet when he comes back, the end of the story is God had worked. God had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles. Folks, anything we do for God is not going to be easy. There's going to be disappointments, certainly going to be a spiritual battle. People will disappoint you like Mark did, these men. There's going to be just unique things that happen, and even dangers at times, but that's not the end of the story. If we're faithful and we'll do the will of God, there's always that encouragement. There's always that time you can give a report that God did exactly what he said he would do. And you never get to that time of encouragement if you back off and not do the will of God. If you look for safety instead of the road of ministry that God has for you. I'm afraid many Americans are hunkering down, seeing the clouds over the horizon, are not willing to serve the Lord. Listen, the safest place to be is in the active will of God. And even when you're disappointed, even when there are struggles, I promise you there's going to be a day for a good report. Missionaries go through it all the time. People in ministry, that's just part of the life. But oh, the thrill of hearing what God has done. So be encouraged. But the way to stay encouraged is do what Paul and Barnabas did. Fulfill the will of God for your life, and you'll be able to give a good report.